Welcome to Carter's Retro Reviews. You know, as time goes on and technology starts to get better, one thing that's happened is not only have we got faster internet, that's a given, right? But we also have a bigger data allowance, which is really good, because I used to download my porn, and I think that method is old hat. I don't need to do it anymore. It's not necessary. I can just stream everything, because my internet connection now is good enough that I can just stream my porn whenever I need to, switch on incognito mode, and away I go. The only people who know what crazy shit I like, you know, nana porn, fat chick porn, all that sort of stuff, is the NSA. Oh shit, I shouldn't have mentioned that. That's alright, I'll let it out at the end. That's cool. In my original review, I wrote this big long flowery speech about how progress bars meant something, and they did back in the 90s when you spent most of your time looking at one, waiting, watching. Now I suffer from a new problem, and one I never thought I'd ever have. Too much entertainment. This game might have passed for entertainment, but in today's standards, I have so many options. Hell, even back when this came out, would you prefer to play Virtua Fighter 2 or this? If you're a developer and you made a game, and it's not better or offers anything new and exciting on anything that's already out, why fucking bother? And no, I'm not being facetious. In the same breath, this game's not dreadful, but it's certainly no Dead or Alive, Virtua Fighter 2, Last Bronx, Fighting Vipers, etc. And by the time this game came out in 1997 on the Saturn, that was well into the life of the console. It's not a launch title. The company that made this title is Zoom. Never heard of them? Completely understandable. Neither have I until Wiki kindly reminded me that they did Mr. Mosquito, and that is a game I would love to own one day for the PS2. Hailed as one of the weirdest games by a bunch of websites I don't actively read, and it might be safe to say that this is one company I'll never cover off again, as this is the only Saturn title they've ever released. They did a bunch of titles for the X68000, a PC that only ever sold in Japan, and was made by Sharp. It did totally killer games and a dual floppy disk drive. This version of Zero Divide is actually the third of the series, with the first being on PC, the second one on PS1 and later on PSP, and then this, which seems to be an odd move. The Saturn wasn't selling record amounts of consoles, and Sega were in the process of moving on with their next console, which was going to solve all of their problems. And the prequel to this game is on a rival console, which was selling millions of consoles. The story itself is really by the by, because I don't speak or read a word of Japanese, so the importance is now on the gameplay and everything else. Presentation of the game is actually a highlight. Both the menu presentations have this reasonably plain look to it, but functions well. But the most distinguishable character this game has is the level selection. It was a little confusing at first, but only needed 3 seconds to work out you have a choice of 3 characters per round, and you have to finish all 3. But you can choose in which order, and that is really good. It looks nice, great colours. Graphics, okay I guess. Not fantastic, not bad. If anything, they're probably a bit better than I give them credit for. I mean, they're a bit glitchy and they're not as sharp as other 3D fighters like Dead or Alive and Virtua Fighter 2, but with a game like this on the Saturn, you're always going to be making comparisons to its contemporaries. What's weird is the overall look is rough, but the detailing is actually pretty good. The shapes of the polygons are a bit rough, but the shading's okay. Animation's pretty good as well, and the colours are also bright. Sound is a wafer above average. The songs are good, not particularly memorable, and they've been done a million times before. Sound effects are pretty good though, really giving us this robot combat vibe. Gameplay's a mixed bag. Controls are reasonably snappy and the button config is just about right. The biggest problem I have is the game itself being so lacking in personality that the story didn't matter, the characters don't matter, and the hand-to-hand combat is not particularly thrilling. It's not bad, as technically it's perfectly fine, but that's like having a song where the guitar shreds and he's technically proficient, but can he belt out an amazing harmony or write a half-decent song that anyone actually wants to listen to? Would he shoehorn in a guitar solo into a boppy song? What's the point of having all these chops if you can't make anything from it? What we're seeing here is the opposite of the sum of its parts, where the game adds up to a perfectly fine game, but it's just not fun. Okay, well maybe that's being a bit too harsh. Maybe it's an acceptable game of fun, but the personality of the game is dim. And I'm not saying it's as bad as Rise 2. Oh god, very few games are that bad. And it's not the robot combat I'm against either, as games like Cyberbots can show you can have a little fun in the sun and still be robot based. My other quip with this game is that a lot of robots feel free moving like people. And I get that they're doing the cyborg thing, but it doesn't look like a cyborg, and it doesn't feel like a robot, and it feels like people with a cyborg robot skin over the top. Not all of them like Tao, but most of them do, which removes me slightly from the experience. Replayability here is in the form of 2-player. The actual modes we have here are the staples: 1-player, versus, time attack, and replay mode. Would I recommend this game? I will, only on the proviso that you're a fighting fan and you could do worse. Anyone else would have a hard time trying to appreciate this game. It's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. The Saturn has a few games worse than this, but then again, certainly not essential, and the Saturn also has better games than this. If you've exhausted all other fighting games to fucking death, this wouldn't be a bad game to own.